All right, we are live for the midweek edition of the morning check-in, and it will be a doozy today, to say the least. But anyway, welcome. My name is Mike, the host of Detroit's #1 morning check-in talk show, and looking forward to sharing my 2 cents on a variety of subject matter, and in particular, bond yields are rising. Therefore, that is a cause for concerns in the international community. And so I have a very interesting article here in reference to the thought process of a billionaire out in the Asian region. And once again, the U.S. debt is and has been the primary focal point of the capital structure, the investment realm, international trade, and everything in between. And when there's a lack of confidence in U.S. liabilities, as I like to call them, then that definitely will trickle its way down to our currency and our everyday lives and everything in between. But we're going to talk about that a lot more. So welcome, good people. Hope all is well. As always, going to give you some good news from the daily devotional, getting you spiritually charged up. We'll get into some market activity, and then we'll get into some headlines, which is predominantly based upon the noise that we're usually fed by the mainstream pundits. But my job here is to decipher the noise, give you something to think about in hopes of you being able to better assess where we're at to prepare for the days ahead. And so we're going to do just that. But as always, for those who might be new, you never know, any first-time viewers, if you are interested in an alternative perspective to this world that we live in the midst of going through a reset, then I encourage you to like, subscribe, share, hit the bell notification, the check mark wherever you're watching from, so that you'll never miss a update that I like to put out. So I have a couple headlines I want to share, and we'll do just that. But before I move forward, for those who might be new, I want to encourage you, Dollar IQ, 10 simple questions that can be found at rethinkingthedollar.com/quiz, or just go to rethinkingthedollar.com. And it'll basically help you on your monetary literacy journey to better understand what we have been conditioned to think is actual money, and it's not. It is a Federal Reserve note, aka a U.S. derivative of our currency that is a liability, that is an asset of a privately held institution, and all the good things that go with that. But once again, if you guys are interested, encourage you to take the quiz. You'll be surprised at what you know. Current average is about 56 or 7% or something like that. So just a way to get you started. Then there's some following steps that you can jump on and educate yourself. So feel free to do that at rethinkingthedollar.com/quiz. Okay, let's get into some good news, man. I want to get right into the good news because it is what I consider to be the most important information of the day. It is your relationship with the Messiah himself. All right, it says perfect peace. May 14th, I'll give it to you straight. It says, you will keep him in perfect peace whose mind is stayed on you because he trusts in you. Excuse me, in you. Isaiah 26:3. And then it goes on to say, perfect peace, not temporary calm, not fleeting relief, but perfect peace. That's the promise of the King to those whose minds are anchored in him. Now fast forward to Jesus, standing on the stormy sea in Mark 4. The disciples panic. But what does the King do? He rebukes the wind and says to the waves, peace, be still. And instantly there's calm. Why? Because the Prince of Peace was present. When your mind is stayed on him, when your thoughts, your trust, your meditation are rooted in his word, you tap into a kingdom atmosphere where storms don't rule, peace does. This is more than a feeling. It's a position of faith, a reality of the kingdom. The same King who calmed the sea lives in you through the presence of the Holy Spirit. And so the same peace is also yours because it's a fruit of having the Holy Spirit inside of you. Closing prayer is, Lord, keep my mind stayed on you today. Help me do that and establish me in your perfect peace. In Jesus' mighty name, amen. All right, my good people, that is some good news. Hopefully it was good news for you because when it came across my radar this morning, it definitely got me spiritually charged up. Okay, so let's keep it moving. Let's look at the markets, man. Yeah, it's going to be a very interesting day. So one thing that caught my attention is this headline here, which it's old. Therefore, it lets us know that something's changed since then. And it says here, Treasury yields move lower as investors weigh the state of the U.S. economy. And this was this morning at 3:57 a.m. And since then, something's changed. And what am I talking about? We have the U.S. 10-year Treasury moving up. The 1 month is up. 1 year is up. 2 years up. 30 years up. And so whenever yields increase, that's a sign that there is some selling off or dumping of U.S. liabilities. And so just this information here says U.S. 10-year Treasury yield was down 1.4 basis points at 4.845, while the 2-year fell less than 1 basis point. So this was, as I mentioned, at 3:57 this early morning, a.m. And as of right now, today, as we speak, that is not the case. It has risen. And I remember, in previous live streams when I was with Manico 64 Mario, we're talking about the time frame as the 10-year, as it breaks 4.5, eventually touches 5, and then from that point, sky's the limit, because that will be the indication where the debt market itself is having major issues. Therefore, the United States government is on the hook, and something needs to take place. And we all know what that will be. More easing, as I like to say. And so what does that mean for the rest of the world? The U.S. liabilities have been and are the primary capital wealth storages because it is embedded in the monetary system. And one of the concerns of this reset we're in is that something has to give, and it's, of course, going to be the debt first and everything associated with debt, which is the fiat-based instruments that we have grown to know as our currency. And then what will the people have? And that's why I always encourage people to get gold, get silver, get anything that's real, tangible, and scarce in nature, because the amount of currency that will be brought into existence to try to paper over these problems will be beyond our comprehension. And so me as an American citizen concerned with this whole debt issue, that's why the whole rethinking the dollar motto has been my primary focus for over a decade now, because I know that there's a day where this instrument here will be exposed the same way that all the other 100 plus currencies will as well, because they are literally contractual obligations between a government and a private bank, in which we are caught in the middle, being forced to pay taxes on something that doesn't even really exist. Those are all ledgers on a screen somewhere. So where does that leave us? It leaves us in deep trouble. But then again, there's always opportunity, because as I refresh my screen here, these instruments still spend. And what do I mean by that? Here we have gold and silver right now. So we have Treasury yields rising, but yet gold and silver is taking a little bit of a hit. So this is literally a coordinated attack on the spot price of gold and silver. And so the fact that it's down in the red while bond yields are increasing lets us know that this is a concerted effort to make sure that it becomes obvious that people don't run to safety when the U.S. government is experiencing more pressure on the amount of interest that they are required to pay on the debt that they issue. And we know debt is a primary focal point of the system, and the U.S. is on the hook for trillions that's due in a couple of weeks. So we'll see what happens, as I always say. But gold and silver, this equates to a great buying opportunity for those that recognize where this will end up. Okay, now let's look at the crypto space and see what's happening out here, because this is another thing that people love to focus on, and I got some stuff to talk about as well. And so these are things that are not going away. This is where they will prefer us to go. And so as of right now, let's just glance through some of the primary coins, as you can see above my head here. Bitcoin is 103, Ethereum is 2,500, XRP is 257, and then right on down the list, pick your poison, whatever your favorite project is, you see where it's at. And as of right now, I think the market cap is about $3.7 trillion. And I believe that once the printers cut back on officially to try to prop up the bubbles as they burst, there's going to be trillions that make their way towards the crypto space. So from a speculation standpoint, once again, a lot of those cryptos on there are actual companies that are being utilized to help orchestrate this technological revolution we're experiencing. And two particular projects on here happen to be Chainlink and Ondo. Remember those two names, because I'm going to give you more explanation as to how they're being utilized. And you shouldn't be surprised at all. Okay. And you shouldn't be surprised at all. Let's get to the primary subject matter of the day. And so as always, for those who are plugged in, I encourage you to go to rtd.news. This is the website, take you right here. And links in the description here. You can get all the information you need. And I want to jump right into it. So these are some subjects. So I have all types of articles, but this is something that the world will acknowledge. And me as a holder of these instruments here, I'm forced to pay attention to this stuff because the currency that we use is the bedrock of this type of talk here. CP Group tycoon warns U.S. Treasury sell-off could weaken America's status. So we got a billionaire saying that a Treasury sell-off, which is a part of what we're witnessing on a global stage, could weaken American status, i.e. our reserve status and everything else in between. And this is not an overnight process. This is going to take some time. But the whole point is to not become a casualty of monetary malfeasance, as I like to call it. And so let's just jump into this here. So as you can see here, it says Thai billionaire Danine says Trump's reciprocal tariffs won't last. And we're going to find out why they won't last, but it's quite obvious. I mean, the more you attack someone, forcing them to pay extra through taxation, it's only natural that you're forced to diversify outside of the very thing that's being held against you, which is the currency. Duh. I know that. But then again, maybe this billionaire is on to something. I don't know. Maybe he has a little bit of credibility. It says Thailand's richest man and advisory chairman of the CP Group warned that Washington risks losing its global leadership position if countries pull back from investing in treasuries amid sweeping tariffs imposed by Donald Trump. So it says if countries pull back. And so, of course, we got Donald Trump right now making his way through the Middle East, trying to reassure the Middle Eastern nations, or to help reassure the longevity of the dollar and U.S. liabilities by this whole investment structure that he's putting up to where he's trying to get Saudi Arabia to put forth $1 trillion. Just saw a headline saying that Qatar has put $200 billion on the table that they're looking to invest. So while the rest of the world is concerned about these tariffs and the desire to eventually move away from U.S. liabilities, we had Donald Trump trying to reassure the Middle East nations by having them invest into the U.S. And, of course, that investment is centered around continuing to support and hold our debt. And so it says, speaking to Nokia Asia on Friday, says the 86-year-old said that trade war has had little impact on this agri-food collateral conglomerate, which adopts a produce and sell locally strategy while importing about 80% of its production and machinery from Japan. Says Danon said Trump has erratically implemented the America First policy as a expense of the country's partners, disrupting the U.S.-led international infrastructure, whatever that's right. He has a careless and trigger-happy attitude when it comes to tariffs, said Danon, who spoke in Mandarin. He says, but it's a short-term victory for him. In the long run, the U.S. stands to lose. And so it says, despite a mounting federal debt of $30 trillion, a octogenarian said Washington should continue to lead the global economy as its treasury bills remain the most reliable investment instrument. But it says, if Trump overturns the world's economy, how will the U.S. thrive and who will invest in its securities? And so literally, Donald Trump is turning this entire monetary structure inside out with this tariff talk. And this is all designed to cover up the reset. You know, he just needs something to capture the attention while all this other stuff takes place under the surface, which is clearly a part of this reset that we're in, just because we're witnessing the involvement of all the technology stuff being implemented. And that's why Bitcoin is so important, because Bitcoin is being used by our own leaders here in this country as an escape hatch for all the trillions that will come into existence, because they will create trillions to try to flood the world. The U.S. will definitely adopt a Bitcoin reserve, and then they'll take those trillions to buy Bitcoin. The Bitcoin will then back the U.S. Treasuries. The U.S. Treasuries, they'll be used as collateral to issue more debt. And so this whole cyclical nature of debt on top of debt on top of debt must exist. And so this digital technology is needed. And hence the words Chainlink and Ondo, which I'm going to share with you in a minute, and how they're going to pull this off, in my opinion. Okay. And so it says here, it says Japan can tell the U.S. that if the economy suffers from the trade war, it will no longer be able to buy treasuries and might have to reduce its holdings. So literally, he's leveraging the fact that Japan has been the biggest purchaser and one of the largest holders of U.S. liabilities. And depending on how activity between them continues on, they're going to be forced to make some tough decisions. And so I'll spare the rest of that. But here we have a billionaire saying that Japan is going to be a very interesting, catalyst slash decision maker moving forward on the amount of treasuries that they decide to hold or do not hold. And if Japan is not on the boat as far as supporting U.S. debt, there needs to be other buyers elsewhere. And that's where Bitcoin comes into play and all the other digital gateways that are being created to help monetize our debt through alternative means is what the U.S. government will be forced to do. And what do I mean by that? Here is a good example of what we can expect to take place. And this goes into a recent article that was just put out. And it says here, JPMorgan Chase steps beyond the walled garden to settle transactions on a public blockchain. JPMorgan, public blockchain. What are we talking about here? It says JPMorgan Chase has steadily developing its own blockchain tech for years. Excuse me. And it says here, but instead of integrating it with public blockchains, U.S. largest bank has taken what many in crypto call the walled garden approach and built out a private network only its customers can use. Now, JPMorgan is venturing beyond the garden. On Wednesday, today, it announced that it has settled a transaction on a public ledger with the help of crypto firms Chainlink and Ondo Finance, two crypto companies that have built software that allows for easier transactions of things on a public ledger. And why is this so important? Because here we just had a billionaire commenting on how the world will be forced to make some decisions in reference to who buys U.S. liabilities, i.e. our treasuries. And so it's good to say this trade war will continue on because this is a cover-up for something bigger. This is a part of the calculated restructuring of the monetary framework. And so there will be no winners, but there will be a reboot of the system. And on the other side of this will be the tokenization of every real-world asset, which is a part of the plan from day one. And Donald Trump knows that, realized that all his crypto counsel around him are helping to accomplish that goal. But they need things to distract us from what's really happening because they can't just come outright and reboot the system because everything is predicated on a smoother transition or them remaining in control of the system. And so China, Russia, they're all building the same infrastructure using technology, i.e. software, to tokenize real-world assets so that they can have a easier and smoother way of being able to track, trace, and surveil humanity, because you really won't own nothing outside of what we don't own already, but it'll be something that is transactable in real time, in easier formats. The deeds to your house, every piece of paperwork that's of importance to you as a person will be on a ledger. And then the owners of that ledger ultimately controls the on and off ramps of that person's activity. And this is what this is about. And this is a part of the reset. And then it says here, let's give you a little bit more of what I'm talking about. It says here, in early May, JPMorgan's blockchain division, Kinexes, transferred money between two accounts on its private blockchain to settle purchase of tokenized treasuries on Ondo's public ledger. So here we have tokenized treasuries. So you have U.S. liabilities that have been recategorized via put on a public ledger in the form of ones and zeros and given ownership to whoever owns the public and private key, which gives you the ownership rights to this particular instrument. And within that tokenization on the ledger gives you the amount and all the details needed, similar to how all this type of activity has taken place on the other old archaic gateways, such as the SWIFT, which is the interbanking communication network. And then you have all the other gateways that are being utilized to transact in this magnitude is now being updated. And so JPMorgan Chase, Jamie Dimon's one of the most interesting bankers of all times, one of the too big to fail banks, they have a blockchain division. And so it says tokenized treasuries are money market funds that live on the blockchain. And so literally money market funds are another way of making products that the consumer can invest in. So they take our deposits. You can lend your money to them through a money market account. They go buy U.S. liabilities. The little bit of a transactional fee takes place on their part. The government gets an immediate buyer. And then all this takes place on a gateway such as a tokenized treasury, Ondo's public ledger. And you are the beneficiary of whatever interest is given through that treasury. JPMorgan makes money on the transaction fee, and then the U.S. government has a buyer. It says to trigger the payment, JPMorgan's used Chainlink, a communication protocol that lets blockchains process outside information. And then it goes on to say the Ondo transaction isn't the first time JPMorgan has experimented outside of walled garden. The bank announced several proofs of concepts over the years, including 2024 experiment on Siemens Digital. So here we have the rest of the world running from U.S. liabilities, aka treasuries, and there being a debt issue that's becoming quite known. The U.S. government still needs a supporter, and they're building out the infrastructure through tokenizing treasuries on these blockchains, in which the too big to fail banks will continue to be the mediators of. They used to be the buyers or the middlemen to helping get funds back into the government's coffers. The Federal Reserve would then buy it from those accredited / authorized dealers, and then they would then deposit the funds into the government's bank account. So that whole little window there is still in operation. The central bank is still in control. Jerome Powell is still in office, regardless of the whole Trump-Powell beef. They love to have us think that they're on different teams. And then you got the too big to fail banks, which are building out the tokenization framework to continue to support the United States government. And then, of course, that's why it's important for Bitcoin to become a part of the mainstream narrative, because Bitcoin and other cryptos will become assets that these same too big to fail banks can hold on their balance sheets as collateral to help reinsure the backing of these treasuries. And so you're going to have the U.S. government come out with a Bitcoin reserve. They're going to buy up all types of Bitcoin, use those as collateral, similar to how before we got off the gold standard, gold was the primary medium that was used as a backing to the future debt that was issued, that was canceled, and now they're going to use Bitcoin. So Bitcoin was created for this exact same moment in time that we're witnessing now. But in order to get the people to buy into it, you got to make them feel like they are part of this, because they get the experience, as I call it, SPA, which is software price appreciation. And so that's when you look at all the maxis that are overly excited for the future of Bitcoin, and then you bring in some very influential individuals such as the Michael Saylors, the Max Kaisers, and they make people feel as like this particular software here is going to be the way out for humanity, but all along it's designed to help prop up and prolong the role of the Federal Reserve note and the dollar systems. Then you kind of see where this is heading. And so Bitcoin has to succeed in order for this reset to take place, and actually for the United States government to actually accomplish everything that they have worked so hard for. And so we are right where we're supposed to be in this reset. And regardless of whatever political affiliations you have, whether you voted for him, you didn't vote for him, it doesn't matter. He's doing exactly what he was put in office to do, which was to oversee the American reboot. And so some people look at it as a default because we were bankrupt as a nation, but actually it was all a part of the original plan, because we are coming down the home stretch where our currency will be exposed and they're going to need some backup plans. And that's why they're fighting to have this USD stablecoin brought into existence, because it will be used as a alternative way to provide liquidity for the world, or to receive liquidity from the world, because the stable coins will be used to help buy the dollars or the Bitcoin on the balance sheet of the Treasury or Fed or whoever holds them will be able to issue USD stable coins directly into the market, and then they'll be able to buy up some debt. So it's just like you see the interweb connectivity of this system and how everything is being done strategically, and it's right according to the timing in preparation for whatever comes next. And so it's becoming more and more obvious for me as someone who's very skeptical, always question mainstream narrative, don't believe what I'm told until I can better understand it and decode it for myself, because Donald Trump will be the last sitting president under the Federal Reserve note system, because we're approaching ground zero here. There's not much purchasing power left, and so they need something to replace this physical cash. Hence the idea of Spain not allowing people to withdraw over 3,000 euros without having to prove what it's for, where you got it from, and where it's going. And you don't think the U.S. is going to do the same thing at some point? Okay. But anyway, this is what's happening in the news on top of a lot of other things. Just for the sake of sparing you guys time, I'd encourage you, if you have not, check out the rtd.news website, where I put all the other articles. There's more stories than I can actually get to during these short segments. The goal is to just give you something straight and to the point. So if you guys want more stories, there's a lot more stories on the horizon here. So as you can see here above my head, there's all types of stories dealing with the monetary system, dealing with politics, and everything in between. So just something to get your wheels churning. But once again, if you're interested, I encourage you, go to rtd.news, links in the description, and you can get yourself some more information there. And more importantly, I want to continue to remind people, regardless of what is taking place in the world, it is your responsibility to protect yourself. And I believe one of the best ways to do that is to get the most affordable gold on the market, and it happens to be through the gold backs. And so once again, these notes here will help preserve and protect current and future purchasing power in many ways. So if you're interested, links in the description. Go to buygoldnotes.com, get yourself some, or redeem your fiat and get real gold. 24 karat gold. You can't beat that, people. And also, for those who want to get involved directly into the silver market, I encourage you to join the Silver Network. It is the Silver Team through the Quicksilver Wealth Accelerator Program. And in doing so, you can get yourself a landing page, become your own buyer, so that you can earn discounts and help other people do the same. And you'll be rewarded for your efforts, and then take those rewards via fiat and turn it back into silver. It is what I call the perfect silver cycle. And so if you're interested in joining the team, I would love to work with you directly. Go to mysilverteam.com, links in the description, and you can get all the information you need there. And I will see you on the other side, good people. But anyway, be blessed, be safe, love, live, laugh, learn, and share your faith with somebody today. You never know who might need to hear some good news. Shalom.